This is the second presentation of speakers for the Utah Queer Historical Society, and we'd like to welcome you all out. I'm always, and I think Connell is too, surprised how many people we get. So,
who are you?
Oh, I'm Ben Williams. I'm chair of the, temporarily, of the Historical Society. We are actually a project of the Utah Pride Center. And so we're officially affiliated with the center, and they have let us have this room to have these, set up for it and everything. And we'll be doing a monthly guest speaker. We haven't got one yet for March, but we do have Kate Kendall and Carol Gennady coming to speak in April about legal issues in the early 1990s. So we hope that these presentations will be informative, and if you love history or like to know where we come from, or if you just want your memories jogged, this should be a great opportunity to come here. If you get a chance, the center, I think just yesterday, had put up the Christian Reese Award portraits that are up in this stairwell over here. So you might want to get a chance to look at that too. And that was a project of the Historical Society. So,
and how far back does that go?
To 1988,
oh,
for the first one. Also, we have business meetings the third Sundays here at the center at 1, and it's open to anybody who would like to attend those meetings. If you have a project you want to work on, if something is of interest of you, everything, we'd welcome you to come and join. It's not just an elite group of people, it's open for everybody in the community, because it is our history. So I'm going to turn the time over now. Do I need to cover anything else?
I don't think so.
There's cookies and water in the back if you like some, and I'm going to turn the time over. This is Connell O'Donovan, and our guest speaker is Kevin Hillman.
Kevin, come on up here. And I'm really excited for April's meeting with Kate Kendall. And if you don't know who she is, she's the departing director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights. She's a native of Utah, and she was one of the lawyers that argued before the Supreme Court for marriage equality. So that's a huge deal, and she's amazing. I've known her since 1989. She helped, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so Kevin, thank you for being here with us. I'm going to quickly do a quick interview to get biographical data from him. So just hang on, and then Becky will formally introduce him, and then he will give his remarks. So your full name, please.
Kevin Clair Hillman.
How do you spell Clair?
C-L-A-I-R.
Okay.
The masculine way.
All right. I didn't. And what is your full birth date?
August 18th, 1957.
Where were you born?
What's your social?
In Teton Valley, Idaho, in Driggs, Idaho, in the Valley Hospital.
Okay, and your father's full name?
David Clair Hillman.
And your mother's full name, including her birth name?
Margaret Lenora Wade Hillman.
Okay. And how many siblings do you have?
There's 7 of us.
Where do you fit in those 7?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest? Oh, okay. And what is your relationship status?
I'm married.
And what is your husband's full name?
What's your full name?
Dr. Alt. Ryan Val Alder.
Okay. He doesn't tell me the V thing.
No, I didn't hear what it was, and I'm sure the camera didn't get it either.
Ryan Val Alder.
How do you spell Alder?
A-L-D-E-R.
Okay. And Becky, I think that's all that I have for now. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
I'll go back and get it.
I love having the privilege of introducing Kevin Clair Hillman to our crowd. He's nervous that I'll tell the wild stories, which, by the way, catch me later, I have them. When I met Kevin, I was doing a gay radio program, and so I got to meet a lot of people in the Valley and learn what they said. Well, Kevin was this dynamo who was already doing 1,000 things. the Utah Gay Rodeo Association. One of the very first non-bar, non-court related award ceremony, and I hope that he mentions to talk about the building bridges. But if you deal with Kevin, and when he took over and helped with the Pride 2 years in a row, because Pride used to be done completely by our community, volunteer completely, and it meant you spent hours while you're trying to do your job and to pay attention to your spouse. It just was lots of work. So I have the privilege of saying you have somebody that you get to hear today who hasn't finished doing the 1,000 things he's doing. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Becky. I was reminded by my cowboy friends, I was supposed to take the hat off when I went inside, but I figured I'd start out with it. I'm really happy to be here tonight. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not ever at a loss for words. I remember when we used to have Gay and Lesbian Community Council when I was co-chair of Gay Pride, there was not ever a time when they said, what does Kevin have to say? It was, how long will Kevin talk? So I have a reputation. Real quick, a little more background about myself. I was raised in a quasi-Mormon family. It wasn't the strictest. I served a Mormon mission to San Francisco Bay Area from 1977 to 1979. I happened to be eating at Fisherman's Wharf the day Mayor Moscone and Harbor Milk were murdered, and saw the candlelight vigil come off of the Castro. All of which I didn't know what was going on. I just remember thinking at the time that was a beautiful thing and what were they celebrating. So my mission was an interesting experience because I hadn't really come out to myself. I didn't know what gay was. My first 10 days were spent in the city. I walked out of the apartment as I watched men walking by with chaps and jock straps and women in leather gear, and they were having the Polk Street Leather Festival about a block from our apartment complex. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me. I was told it was going to be an interesting area to be. My mother called and says, "What's it like there?" And I said, "We wear jeans under our chaps." I apologize in advance. I tend to get emotional a little bit when I talk about my friends and the people who have meant so much to me in this community. After my mission, I moved to Logan, Utah. I worked on a family farm, did all that farm stuff. And I did get engaged at one point, but I actually had a relationship with somebody a month before that I got married and decided I better figure out who I was, and so we broke that off. She did give the ring back though, so I still have it. I was attending church at that time, and the gay and lesbian thing was a big deal. The church was kind of cracking down on people back in the early 80s, and I kind of wanted to be excommunicated. And so the bishop asked me if I'd do some things, and I basically told him very graphically what I like to do. And he said, maybe we should talk behind closed doors. So I went to my church court of love, where two of the men there were men that I had been with. So that was an interesting experience. But again, it's just part of who I was and part of what made me decide to move forward. I, that point, decided I wanted to come and find out about the community, and so I headed to Salt Lake. So in 1982, when I was excommunicated, almost next month will be, I don't know how many years, it's been a while. But the first gay bar I went into was the Deer Hunter. I went in on a Saturday afternoon, and I had a bartender, and we started talking. And he looked so much like my uncle, I asked him a few questions, come find out we were cousins. So the first bar drink I ever had was served to me by my second cousin. So that was my experience in my first gay bars. When I came down here, there was a lot of gay bars. There was a lot of opportunity to go out. I think at that time there must have been about 10 of them all over the city. I got to the Sun Trap for the first time, and some young people were standing out by a wall, and they said they wanted to get in, and so I helped them climb over the wall to get into the sun. And I've stayed friends with them for quite some time, and ever since then, and enjoy running into them every once in a while. When I first came out, the first thing I did was come down to Salt Lake again, like I said. And someone had told me about a group of guys that were country western dancing at the in-between, so I went over there, and they were the Goldens, or the what were they called?
Golden Spurs.
What were they called?
Spurs?
Golden Spurs.
No, it was what was the name of the rodeo association at that time? Golden Spike Gay Rodeo Association. Thank you. And so I got involved with them and danced with them a little bit when I came down here. Didn't really get to know anybody too well, but I had a lot of fun. And because of that, they invited me to go with them to Reno to some of the gay rodeos that were being held there. And gay rodeos started in the United States in 1975. 76 is when they held the first rodeo in Reno, and they held it to raise money for MDA. In the 1976 or 78 rodeo they had, it was the only gay rodeo in the country, they raised about $40,000 for MDA. And then after that they started moving towards raising money for HIV and AIDS. In 1982 and 83 I attended the gay rodeos in Reno. And anywhere, they're saying between 10 and 12,000 gay men and women showed up to see these rodeos. I remember you couldn't find a seat in the stands. The grand marshals were Bette Midler and Joan Rivers. And if anybody knows about the gay hanky code, Joan loved handing out brown and black and red hankies. So it was a lot of fun. It was the first time I had ever been around that many gay people and immersed so heavily after coming out. I remember going to a restaurant and the people at another table didn't want to sit by the gay guys. And the lady in the restaurant said, well, then you better go outside because everybody else in here is. So the rodeos were a great experience. They actually opened up shuttered casinos to house the people. We found a room for 12 of us that we shared when I was at the first rodeo because there just wasn't any rooms left. And you'd go down to dance and the buses had shut down the streets and you could stand on balconies. It was just a whole sea of people doing country western dancing, two-stepping and swinging and things like that. Line dancing wasn't as popular with them at that point. So that was a lot of fun, and that's how I kind of come into the community. For a few years I drove back and forth between Logan and here. Never got really that much more involved in the community. Then I moved out of state for a while and I went to Texas. And the one thing I did remember about here when I moved to Texas was the community was pretty cohesive. The women and the men seemed to speak to each other. There wasn't a lot of issues between the two groups. I get in Texas and I'm going out to one of the gay bars and I sat down and I had a very, very bush woman come and ask me if I was there with a female friend. I said, no, I'm gay. And she said, then you're on the wrong side of the bar. You need to move to the other side of the bar. And that was the first time I'd realized that other communities were separated. And that kind of was an eye-opening experience for me, which I really never understood. And they'd go out on the dance floor and it was almost like I had a line down the dance floor and the women danced on one side and the men danced on the other. So that never happened in Salt Lake when I was here. I mean, everybody was dancing together and everybody was on the floor. So after that, I quit that job and then I came back and became a streetwalker in Salt Lake City. So they make me deliver mail to get a paycheck, though. I'm kind of notorious at my office and throughout the post office. Whenever we have new bosses, I always like to make sure they know who I am. So I wear these around the office until they figure out that I'm wearing them. And even the women at the post office aren't allowed to wear a heel that high. So it was my way of kind of coming out to myself and to others. And I started attending the Gay and Lesbian Community Council, and I got involved with the gay rodeo here, and that's when they were the Utah Gay Rodeo Association. And I went to my first IGRA rodeo, which is what the gay rodeo was called at that time. They were formed in 1985. And I went to the finals rodeo in Phoenix, met a lot of people, and got the fever again to want to compete and be involved in rodeo heavily. So I came back to Salt Lake and started getting involved, and poor Ron Johnson over here, he had to put up with me. One of the people who I admire greatly for everything he did for the Rodeo Association and that kind of stuff. I loved rodeoing. I loved getting involved, and so I decided I would get even more heavily involved with that. But also at that time, I decided I wanted to be co-chair of Gay Pride Day with Brenda Fassard, who was sitting in the back, who abandoned me and went and wanted to go to some school and get a PhD. And then she didn't go. So at that point, Deb Rosenberg stepped in and became the co-chair that year with me. We made some changes. We moved it from a... What's that?
What year?
1991. It was after your first march that I went down and walked down the street and on the sidewalk while you all marched, because I didn't know if I dared be out in the street with you. I was a little afraid of my job still at that point. I hadn't started wearing the high heels yet at that point. Anyway, so Deb and I got together and we moved Pride from a park in Salt Lake City and moved it to the Murray Park and to the Salt Lake County Fairgrounds. And we invited Lynn Lavner, a lesbian entertainer, to come and perform. And I told that's the first time anybody had brought in outside entertainment. We had paid her and had her contract signed, and then we were asked why we were doing that in March. And it was kind of like, well, if you had a problem with us bringing her in, why didn't you say something to us in December when we were signing the contracts? So it was an interesting experience, and I kind of feel like I got thrown into the boiling pot in a hurry about the community. I learned a lot about the community. I learned a lot about what was going on. And yet at the same time, I fell in love with a lot of people in this community. Didn't matter who they were. Also at that time, I got myself involved with the Royal Court of the Golden Spike Empire. So when I was helping produce Pride, I wasn't on the board of directors yet of rodeo, thank goodness for them. I decided that me and Deb would run for Mr., Ms., and Miss Gay Pride, a title the Royal Court gives out. They were going to give the money from the fundraiser to the Pride Committee, so we were willing to do whatever it needed to be. And Deb and I won, so she was Ms. and I was Mr. Gay Pride for 1991. And it was an experience, and then come to find out that was the first year the court has ever given out that title. And so whenever they introduce me at a court event, they always will introduce me as the first Mr. Gay Pride of all Utah. So it's a very honor to be involved with them in that. Also, we held a rodeo event up at the fairgrounds that year, and Rayanne was nice enough to take a picture of me as a young, handsome man that you've seen on the website that was advertising this. It's my favorite picture of myself, so I use it whenever I can. I don't want to look old when I really can look some other way. But anyway, so I got involved with rodeo. The IGRA numbers that we wear on our backs. So when we first started doing it, we had a health form on the back of it, and you had to fill it out, and it was kind of a scary thing for some people to do. For me, the first Pride that we put on, I had talked to somebody and they wanted to know if I was being willing to father a child with them. So I went and got an HIV test to make sure everything was okay. Forgot about it. I got the test on Wednesday before Pride that Sunday. They called me from the health department and said, would you come in and get your results? We need you to come in. So I went in, and I remember they used to set you in a waiting area and then take you off to a side and tell you what your results were. So when they took me on the Trail of Tears from the office through the hallway, down another hall, through another back office, and into a back room, I went, okay, they're taking me back here so they won't hear me screaming and crying. I'm HIV positive. And that's found out when I was HIV positive. It was in 1991, the Wednesday before I helped produce my first Pride. And I never told anybody except poor Michael Aaron. And I pulled Michael aside and I said, okay, I don't know how I'm going to handle this, but I need someone to jump in if things start to go south for me. Well, I made it through Pride, let's just say. Mainly because Deb Rosenberg had just started a new job and wasn't going to do any television interviews. She was afraid of her job being pulled from out underneath her. So I did the interviews. It must have been a slow news day because every early evening newscast had me on. And because of that, there was a group of people who said that when I stated anyone was welcome, they made themselves welcome, and that's when the skinheads showed up at Pride Day. And at that moment, I was kind of losing it, and I was able to pull it back around and pull myself together to deal with that issue. My biggest fear was the men that were about twice the size, most of them, as the skinheads, might try taking care of the skinheads. And even though there was no alcohol allowed in the park, I know there was quite a bit there. But Lynn Lavender was great. When she realized what was going on, she said, you know, let's just turn your backs to them, ignore them. And she started playing a song, and everybody did, and blah, blah, blah. The detective asked me if I had a problem with them being there, and I said, no, they can stay as long as they want, as long as they don't interrupt or disrupt. So then they decided they had to chant. So I asked him, I said, okay, that's enough, they need to leave. And the detective reached over and hit the kid in the chest about 4 times and said, you will leave now. Boom, boom, get the point. So they started to leave. About that time, a bunch of Murray City police officers started showing up. They scattered, and it was quite an experience. It was kind of fun, actually. And they left, and we went over, and the gal that was helping me with security and I went over to talk to the detective. And in the conversation, 2 of the motorcycle officers come over and said, so do the fags need anything else? And I remember thinking, okay, you guys are so stupid, you don't realize that we're the fags. And the detective just looked at him and said, I'm dealing with the producers of this event, when one of the guys just, you could just see the blood drain from his face. And he said, I'll see you guys back at the station. And that was kind of the end of that. I did get a phone call, kind of an apology. In dealing with Murray City to put on Pride, we had an interesting experience because the mayor didn't want to sign off on it. We had to have a letter for him stating that he knew we were going to be within his city. At that time, Dee Dee Corradini was mayor, and she went down and helped him and us draft a letter that he could sign that showed that he didn't approve of the event, but that he was just aware of the event. Once I got that signed, I had to go talk to the chief of police and tell him we were going to be there and discuss our security with him. We sat there about 20 minutes, and he kept asking the same questions over and over. All of a sudden, I kind of realized I was repeating myself, and I won't say I got irritated, but I just realized this was going nowhere. And I sat back in the chair and looked at him, and he kind of stopped talking. And I just stood up and said, you know, we have a constitutional right to gather, and it's your responsibility to protect that right. What other questions you have for me? And he introduced me to the sergeant that was in charge that day. And that was the first time I really had ever felt like the government had a problem with who I was and who we were. And it's kind of empowering, to be honest with you, to be able to use our Constitution to protect us and our rights. So that was a wonderful experience for me. I helped with Pride the next year, then co-chaired in '93. Yeah.
About how many were at Pride that first year?
What would you say, about 12,000? I mean, 1,200? Yeah, somewhere around that number.
Remember, that's not the first year of Pride.
Oh, no.
That's his first time doing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was a lot of other people who had done stuff before me.
But it was a big change. It had been hundreds, and then boom.
Yeah, yeah. And then in '93, again, I co-chaired, and then I helped Antonia De La Gara and Frank Loy produce '94 Pride because Frank kind of abandoned Antonia. And after that, then Jeff Friedman stepped in and started the parade that we have now. And I tell people when I stand on the sidelines at the parade that there are or more people now who walk in this parade than probably attended all 4 years I was involved with Pride. So, and it's fun for me to go to the parade and stand and talk to these people who don't know anything about our history and what's going on. And I don't know, it just is empowering me to think that I have the opportunity to share our history with people who don't know anything about it. And it's getting more and more that I'm sharing it with a lot of young couples and their kids and a lot of young gay people. So I'd encourage you, if you're out to an event or somewhere where you have an opportunity to talk about who we are and where we've come from and where we're going, I'd encourage you to do it. I remember speaking to a young couple, and within 4 or 5 minutes I had like 8 or 9 people standing around me asking questions. And it was a lot of fun. It's fun to be able to brag about our community and tell them where we've come from and how much we've grown and do that kind of stuff. Other than that, I've just kind of been involved with Pride off and on, except for the last year. I've kind of got a burr under my saddle blanket. I feel Pride has moved away from what it is meant to be, an event that celebrates who our community is. And so I've been pushing to get it so that all of our smaller organizations, such as our kickball, our bowling leagues, our support groups like the Older Wiser Lesbians groups and things like that, our rodeo association, our courts and things like that, are able to afford to come and be a part of Pride and not have to pay the exorbitant prices that they're charging for booths and stuff. I went to a meeting several years ago and pounded on a table and said that I thought $200 was way too much to charge a nonprofit organization. And I had a couple of young ladies ask me who I thought I was. I had Bruce Harmon and Bruce Harmon and Fran Prine standing there, and they just kind of said, you don't want to go there. And then they asked me about how I felt about the for-profit booths. They didn't really ask me, they just stopped talking and looked at me, and I said, I don't care, they're for profit. You can charge them whatever you want. But so I do kind of have a burr and a desire to see Pride come back and bring in our community and bring in the gayness to our community back to our Pride celebrations. And hopefully I can have an influence in doing that. I'm sure it'll be a long road ahead, but I'm kind of tenacious and, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I got involved with the court, and I stayed involved with them quite a bit with that title. Was given some honorary things. And one of the things about the court system, the Royal Court of the Golden Spike Empire, when I first started coming out to the bars, Auntie Dee and Joni Lynn, both empresses of the court, took me under their wing and kind of showed me around and showed me the ropes, how the bars worked, how it worked in the community. And I adore those two to this no end. Annie Dee started an event called Salute to Cowboys, and her Tiger Piss Punch, and her annual whipped cream auction, where you buy a can of whipped cream and then you get to lick it off somebody. And all the money for that always went to an AIDS, HIV charity. So the court, as I got to know more about them, and if you know anything about the court, a lot of the organizations that we have in this community had some seed in the Royal Court at some point. Even this center had a seed in that part. Auntie Dee tried to open one at the Sun Tavern, the original Sun Tavern. It only lasted about 6 months. She wasn't able to get it up and going. You look at like the softball and even Pride Day that is come out of that. They didn't have the first prides with the court, but they have the pride that has kept it going year after year. And they are the ones that moved it to where I moved in and was able to help out and put my mark on it. And it was a lot of fun. I have to admit, putting on Pride, I got to meet so many wonderful people. A couple of the funny things is, when I was doing Pride, you didn't have people who wanted to give you money who are giving money now. You begged for every dollar and every dime you got. And when we raised $32,000 to put Pride on in 1991, we thought we had hit the jackpot. And that was the money that was seed money that was used to help make sure Pride kept moving forward. You had politicians who would send a representative. They didn't come to the celebration, but they would have literally a booth about this side with their name on it and somebody standing there talking to you about voting for them. And it's come so far since then that it's just amazing to me. I go and I like to wander around Pride just to look at the changes and see who's there and what faces are there and the support that we're getting as human beings. I don't know. I have to say, when I first produced Pride, Deb Rosenberg was an invaluable resource. Val Mansfield was an invaluable resource. Angela Nutt and Dave Tometz put on the first art show that we had at Pride. I can't remember the young lady's name who is now a guy, who was my security person.
Tony.
Is it Tony? I can never remember what his name is, but I love him to death. He is just, I just reconnected with him here a couple of years ago, and so it's just been really fun to get to rekindle those friendships. Some of the best friendships I ever made were because of that. Some of the most lasting friendships I ever made was because of what came out of my involvement with Pride. I'm standing up here today because of those people. I'm a great person to tell somebody what to do, and I'm a great person to talk you into it. So I can never take full credit for the credit I get in a lot of the things I've done, because there were too many people behind me or before me who set the path and who stayed there and helped me accomplish it. They used my tool of my mouth to help them accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. And I'm very proud of all of those people. As I got involved with gay rodeo, like I said, I was Mr. Pride in '91. I ran for Mr. UGRA in 1992 and was given the title, and so that was my opportunity to help start doing fundraising for the Utah Gay Rodeo Association. Again, Ron was one of the people involved with that when I first got involved, and his friendship is one that will always be very dear to me. Ruby Slippers, Catherine Matthews were my Ms. and Ms. And we had a great time that year. Ruby and I actually ran for the Mr. International Gay Rodeo Association. Ruby got second runner-up, and there was 13 queens from 24 associations running, and it was a great thing for me to see her do that. I ended up 4th overall, probably because I got 10th in Western wear out of 10.
You look good now.
I tried something different. I learned that doesn't work. And my horsemanship video, I didn't finish it. I got off the horse and forgot to remount, so I lost points there too. But it was a wonderful experience because the 10 men that I ran with at that time were men that made me friends for life, and I've been able to know them. The first gay rodeo I competed at, some wonderful men and women helped me. There's events for anybody and everybody who wants to go. I was doing shoot dogging, which is an event where you climb down in the bucking chute with the steer. They let the steer out and then you dog it. Well, my hat fell off, and you can't come out of the chute without a hat. And Jerry Hubble, Jerry, I can't think of his last name right now. He was Mr. IGRA at that time, and he said, you got to get your hat on. So I got this stomped down hat on and put it on. And he says, well, this is my hat, and I wear it for every rodeo. So this is the hat I wore in the very first rodeo I competed in on the IGRA circuit. And if you notice, it's with me now, and this is the hat I wear when I compete now. And it's great because I can smash it down and pack it in my luggage and don't have to worry about what it looks like. And if you worry about what you look like in the arena, you know, that's different. Gay rodeo has a lot of opportunities for people to compete. Everything from rough stock, mounted events, roping events, and the drag events, or camp events, I should say. The rough stock and every event, the women compete right alongside the men, or I should say the men get to ride the same bulls and broncs the women ride. So it's an opportunity for a lot of people who, especially females, who didn't get a chance to compete in these things in their high school days and wanted to. We had one of the top bull riders, Linda Peterson, who competed on our circuit, and she's a great friend. She was a lot of fun. She sent me a Christmas card one year on her bunking bronc, and you can see the horse, and you can see two legs, and it says "Merry Christmas" on a sideways. So it's a lot of fun, the friends I made with that. We have, like I say, roping events and the camp events. Calf roping on foot's an entry-level event. If anybody would like to do that, you just stand by the chute and try and catch the calf. And then we have the camp events. We have steer decorating, where you take a ribbon and you have to tie it on the steer's tail. There's 2 people, and it's a co-ed event where the men and the women compete together. And then we have the wild drag race, where you have a cowboy, a cowgirl, and someone in drag or a costume. You have to get the steer 70 feet out down the arena. It's got a halter on, and then the person in drag has to get back on it and ride it back across the 70-foot line. This is the event we have the most injuries in gay rodeo. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to compete in as well. Then, of course, we have the event that anyone can do, and that's goat dressing. And the idea of that is to take these tighty-whities and put them on a goat, a team of 2. You run down 40 feet, you put the goat tighty-whities on the goat, and then you run back. So, anybody want to try it? We can find somebody in here to be our goat. We'll let you do it. So, it's something that I've got involved in. I stepped away for a few years. We held our first convention here in 1997, and I had the opportunity to chair that. And again, I had some wonderful people. I had Garth Gullickson here, who was there with me, and of course Ron, and several other people helping. Craig Miller in the back, he doesn't realize how much help he was, but his moral support was as important to me as anything. And Brad Earl, he was there with us and helped us do those things, and a lot of other people. And my poor husband was the first time he had been involved in a major event like this and had to work with me, and he found out he doesn't want to work with me. And everybody felt sorry for him because they thought I picked on him. Me and my husband met in 1994. My mother had passed away in September, and we met at the Deer Hunter. We were chatting, and as the evening went along, he was making it known to me that he was interested. Well, I was interested. He asked me for my phone number. Well, the Gay Rag at that point, well, my number was in there for the Dig Awards. It was in there for Pride Day, and it was in there for the Rodeo Association. So I didn't need to give a pen, I just needed to give him this paper, which his friends said I was an arrogant and probably didn't want to get to know me. So I knew where he worked, so I went to his work, and he agreed to go out with me. He had no idea who I was. He made me write my name down on a piece of paper and a phone number so he could figure out who I was. But he agreed to go out with me. So that was our first date in January of 1995. And that's kind of what we call our anniversary. So we've been together over 25 years. Or wait a minute, have we been 24 years? 24 years. We got married in 1993 in California. It was a very romantic thing. We went to his hometown during a time frame when we wanted to take a nice vacation. We got there and we woke up one morning and I looked at him while I was laying there in bed with my hair tousled and said, well, what do you have planned today? And he says, well, I don't have anything. I said, you want to get married? And he says, can you get married in California? I'm like, yeah, Proposition 8 was overturned. So we went and got married. That was our romantic wedding. I have to admit, though, when we went to get the marriage license, the woman there kept asking me if I was okay. I was a nervous wreck for some reason. I was pitted out. The minister we got a hold of said, what do you ceremony want? I said, short and sweet and over with. And it was short and sweet and over with. So then he was stuck with me. So That was in '93, just before the December, as I call it, debacle, when everybody else ran and got married, because I kind of felt bad we didn't go do two, but you know.
How about
2003.
2003, sorry. 2013. 13. Let me get my dates right, and then we'll be in better shape. Our relationship has been one of a lot of fun, getting to know each other's family, and it's like I said, we've been together long enough, and now I'm too lazy to try and have him train somebody else. So, or anyway, however you want to look at it. Going back again, what year was it, Brenda, that we started the Diversity is Great Awards?
I know, I was trying to remember.
Was it '93?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Because Brenda bailed on me on Pride Day, we wanted to work together really bad, and we felt that there was a need in our community to do some more recognition of people in our community. So we came up with a couple of ideas, and we came up with what we called the DIG Awards. And the DIG Award stands for Diversity is Great. And we put together a committee, we had nominations from our community, and we learned from the first one to get a little more tight on our things. We also asked organizations, businesses to recognize one of their employees or volunteers that night, as well as the people that we recognized otherwise. And it was a lot of fun. The money that we raised for that went to the Stonewall Center. I enjoyed doing that. I met, again, a lot of great people. Finally, Brenda went away and went to Berkeley. And so Carrie Gaylor stepped in.
Carrie
and-
Gaylor.
Huh?
Carrie Gaylor.
Yeah, stepped in, and she worked with me on it for a few years. And again, we the first year we recognized, was it Randy Horiuchi or Bradley? Randy Horiuchi. And then during that time, we got a sifting committee together to go through the nominations, and that's when I met Carol Granati and developed a relationship with her, which has been a great thing to do. The DIG Awards went on until about 1997, and for some reason they kind of went away. I can't remember exactly why, but you know, that's the way it was. When I got involved and we had our first community center over there on 9th East, I think Craig Miller was on the board of that one, and we were getting ready to move out of there, and the place where I had the Pride Day t-shirts and hats made, these, were one of them, 93, was closing down, and it was a large old garage, and the rent wasn't too bad, and so I asked them to contact the owner, and so that's where we moved, was over there on 3rd West, where
Ruby Snap.
what's it called?
Ruby Snap Cookies.
Ruby Snap Cookies is located at. So that was where we moved from 9th East over to there, and then from there they moved to the 300 West, 5th North area, and a lot of you been around since then, from there to 4th South and then to here. It's kind of funny, because I remember when I found that place, somebody said to me, "Does it stink?" And it smelled like a garage in the back. But we held one of our diversity dinners back in there, and it was a very cozy, wonderful night, and again, meeting a lot of great people. So, I don't know, that's a pleasant memory of mine, and I tried to find some of the paperwork for it to bring, people could go through, but I couldn't find it in my storage unit. Anybody who's been to my storage unit knows why. Anyway,
Does UGRA still exist?
that's where I'm going. How does that sound? In 2002, Utah Gay Rodeo Association held their first rodeo. They held one in 2002, 2000, 2001, and 2002. Sorry about that, as well as 2004. First three were held at the State Fair Park, and the fourth one up in Farmington. We had the opportunity to have a grand marshal. One of our grand marshals was Ron, and I got a really nice honor in that they asked me to be the grand marshal at our first rodeo. we had a meeting and we voted on a grand marshal, and it was Auntie D. And I was so excited to see her getting that. And I missed a meeting, and I came back and they were talking about ordering the grand marshal buckle. And I was really upset because they had not ordered that grand marshal buckle, and we were so close to the rodeo. And everybody was giving me these funny looks. And it was awful because I was mad, and everybody was like cow-cowing, and nobody cow-cows for me in that group. They fight back. So I didn't know what was going on. So the night they announced our grand marshal, and we had our grand marshal reception, and they announced that I was a co-grand marshal with Auntie D. And the buckle they were talking about was the buckle they were ordering for me, which is this buckle here. So I do have my big buckle from rodeo. It was a special moment to share that with her. And anyway, those guys, I could have kicked their butts. But they're such a great group of people, and like I say, because of them, gay rodeo was able to exist here at that time. My favorite memory of our first gay rodeo is a young man named Clark, and they were interviewing Clark on the evening news, and he was talking about how he had found rodeo, and it was an opportunity for him to get back to his roots because he'd grown up on a farm ranch in Spanish Fork and everything. And in our wild drag event, they showed the wild drag event going on, why they were interviewing him, and the drag is in this blonde wig with go-go boots and this hot pink outfit. And Clark says, and I'm allowed to be myself. Well, Clark's the one in the outfit going on the evening news. So, to this day, that's one of my favorite memories of gay rodeo. After that, I decided I needed to take a break. We used to do Jello shots at the Oscar night, which was a lot of fun and raised a lot of money for them with that. And we haven't done that for a while. So I stepped away basically in 2004 from gay rodeo. And in 2006, they closed their doors. And in 2015, a group...
16.
16?
Yep.
Oh, I guess that's right. 2016, a group got together and wanted to start it back up again. So we were reseated again with the International Gay Rodeo Association in 2016. Okay. And so a group of the members are here tonight. This group, all 5 of these people, my husband, Garth tells me exactly what to do. Brad back here. Our president now is Rayanne Groh, our vice president, Katina Taru, our secretary, Robbie Garcia, Harrison Garcia. Yeah. I'll get it right. Sorry about that. Our Mr. Drag King is Dakota. Wonderful group of people to work with. The most fun I ever had, though, when it comes to getting put in my place in gay rodeo was doing an interview with Becky Moss on KRCL. And we were all in there, and Becky said, "So who has horses?" None of us. She made so much fun of us. But you don't need to have a horse in gay rodeo. You can do goat dressing or any of the other events. And none of us had a horse at that time. So that was back in the 90s. But we had several people who did have horses later. I was surprised she didn't bring that up when she introduced me. But I had the opportunity to do several shows with her back then, and it was a really, really good experience that gave me an opportunity to learn more about the community. At that time frame, again, in about 93, I was asked by Cal Noyce to be on the executive board of the National Gay and Lesbian Union Task Force. So I went to Washington, D.C. to be on their task force. I became a regional officer, and when I was there, I had some really powerful experiences. I was out at work. I'd been on the cover of City Weekly in my mailman uniform and all that kind of stuff. So here we are at this event. It's now called Pride at Work, and it's an affiliate organization of the AFL-CIO, which they pay for the executive director now, and they've done a lot of great stuff for union employees, gay and lesbian, trans. While I was there, I had an experience that changed my life. I got on the elevator. I saw this really cute guy. And I had a suit and tie. We're in Washington, D.C. Suit and ties, you know, I like them. And we get up and we go up, and I was just smiling to myself, thought, oh, that was a really cute person. And I get up there, and our guest speaker is Leslie Feinberg. And if anybody doesn't know, Leslie wrote the book Stone Butch Blues about a trans woman in 70s America. And Leslie identifies as trans, and because of that I went and read that book, and I also went to the trans meeting that they had, and I realized just how lucky I was in a lot of ways, because their community was just now starting to have to fight as hard as they could to be accepted. And I've always appreciated that fact that I had that opportunity to meet her and speak with her and speak with the other trans people there. And because of those connections, anyway, it just gave me a whole new outlook on that part of our community and my social friends and things like that. And I have a lot of trans friends. As a matter of fact, I call her my daughter. I didn't even know her husband was trans until we went somewhere once, and I'd known him longer than I'd known her. And that made me feel good that it didn't matter to me one way or the other, and the fact that I didn't know. And so that community has been a community that I really, really love seeing an opportunity and having the opportunity to move forward. I see them seeing them with a hard fight ahead of them. My friends who are, I watch a lot of them struggle, and I know as a whole and as a community we're supporting them as much as we possibly probably can. But some fights, as we all have found out, have to be our own, and those are mostly personal fights. Again, serving on the board of the Gay and Lesbian National Union gave me the opportunity to meet people all over the country, and the people that I met back there gave me the opportunity to meet Rosie. I knew I wouldn't remember her last name, but she was one of the trans activists at the Stonewall riots. I got to speak to her on the phone a couple of times, and we were trying to bring her out here in 1993 to Pride, but because of health issues she was not able to fly out. And yet I still, between her and Donna Redwing, we worked as best we could, and we still couldn't get any of the two people that I knew were still alive who had been at the Stonewall riots. So, but it was fun talking to her and listening to her and tell stories on the phone. When I saw pictures of her and realized she was that tiny little thing, it was kind of fun. Those are the things that shaped my life early in the 90s. Gay rodeo is something I'm still involved with. I'm the trustee, which is like the legislative representative to the International Gay Rodeo Association. And these people here who are involved with Gay Rodeo now, they put on, after being organized only 2 years, the International Gay Rodeo Convention here in Salt Lake City. And I'm going to say I'm proud of us because they're still talking about convention from November. The Saliva Sisters performed, they loved them, and then we made them into a cheerleading group. So if you get a chance to go online and look up International Gay Rodeo and try and find that, you'll see some of the fun we had with the convention here. We're looking here to put on a rodeo again, and so anybody who would like to help or be involved, please let us know. I see friends here from Logan, when I lived up in Logan, was coming out. Petunia and Courtney, as he is. It was a very interesting time for me living in Logan, because I was still far enough away from Salt Lake that I could be out here and be kind of in there. After I got excommunicated, my boss pulled me in and they were going to put me on probation. And I wanted to know how this secret court, they already knew that I'd been excommunicated. I'm not stupid. I knew that he went home, told his wife, who told that wife, who told that wife. So I told him that I wasn't interested in being on probation. I would be looking for a new job. They could consider this my 2-week notice. The board of directors met that night. They're a very enlightened group of men. The daughter of one of them, the board, was my fellow teller at the bank. I was her supervisor. And she basically told them what had happened and what was going on in the bank, and the board had a conversation, and they basically explained to the people that I was working for that they weren't going to tolerate them putting me on probation unless it had to do with my work performance. So at that point, it was the first time I'd ever had anybody who wasn't gay or lesbian stick up for me like that. And those people, I still keep in contact with many of them to this day. At that point, I went to work for Intermountain Healthcare, moved to Salt Lake, went to work for GTE Health Systems, traveled around the country, and then in '89, that's when I moved back here permanently and went to work for the post office. One of the most powerful events for me in my entire life, though, and other than my husband, was when I attended the March on Washington in 1993. So any of you who had the opportunity to do that know what I'm talking about. I had never seen so many gay people in one place. Everywhere you went, there were gay people. We were on one of the trains, the metros, and we were driving, and they started singing, "If you're gay and you know it, clap your hands." And we were having a good time and laughing, and somebody on the train says, "Hey, is there any straight people on here?" And from back in the corner you hear, "I am." And he goes, "How does it to be a minority?" "I'm a black woman." She was the hero of the train after that. It was a lot of fun. It was very empowering. I went with a lot of friends to that who came back to Salt Lake City, and it changed their lives. A really close friend of mine, David, came out to family and got involved in the community. We call him, "Hi, I'm David. I'm not gay. I'm not a drag queen fraudstrom." If you know him, if you know anything about that, it's pretty funny. That was his coming out prospect. You know. And also, you know, I knew if I didn't write her name down, I'd forget it. The school teacher who was the first.
Wendy Weaver?
No, the first. What do they call them? The school that they oversee a club.
Were you thinking of Camille?
Yeah. What's her name? She lived down the street from you.
Camille Lee?
Camille Lee.
Yeah.
Camille Lee came back from there as a school teacher and wanted to stand up in front of the cameras at Pride that year in '93 and come out and she just finally said she didn't feel like she could do it, and it wasn't too long after that somebody did, and she became the first advisor of the Gay Straight Alliance Club at East High School. So she lived on what I call Lesbian Lane on my mail route. I had a whole bunch of lovely ladies who lived on one street, and it was a joy to go deliver there. They gave me their keys to their houses because my HIV meds had given me some problems and I needed to go to the bathroom quite often. Several of them told me how to get into their homes if I needed to, and that was greatly, greatly appreciated. During the March on Washington, and through Gay Rodeo, I had the opportunity to meet Tori Osborne, who was the director of the Human Rights Campaign, which she was at the time of the March on Washington. I developed a friendship with her, and as a rodeo association, we made a quilt and we tied it. She came here to speak, promoting her book, and we gave it to her at that time, and she talked about that just about every place she went. She thought that was the coolest thing. So as Lucy said last week, there's something about organizing and what Mormons can do, and I think our tying those quilts is a pretty good thing to do, because it made a lot of influence to other places that the Gay Rodeo gave those quilts to. One of the most powerful things I think I saw on the television at the March on Washington, they asked the chief of police from D.C. How things were going, and he said, "They're having fun." And he lowered his sunglasses and he says, "And we're having fun." And I thought that was very, very telling about who we were as a people. I think they said they only had like 4 arrests the whole weekend. I got to go and have the opportunity of standing at the Capitol with the red ribbon where They were going to circle the red ribbon, the Capitol, in honor of those who had passed away from HIV. And there had been two groups there the week before us who couldn't even get around the Capitol holding their hands out as far as they could. And when we were there, you had to fight to be able to get a finger standing sideways on that red ribbon. It was so crowded at the Capitol. And one of the Capitol Police that was there said, he says he couldn't believe how many people were standing there trying to do that. He was amazed by it. And they cut the ribbon up, and there just wasn't enough pieces of ribbon for everybody. And so there was a young man in a wheelchair that lost his ribbon somewhere, and I had given my ribbon to somebody else, and they gave it to him. And that was kind of a very powerful moment for me. Any questions you have for me? What time is it? Have I talked too long? Yeah, I have. So you have any questions for me? Anything you'd like to know about me personally? About my involvement in the community or anything like that? Or have I told you more than you ever wanted to know?
Do you know any wild stories about Becky Moss?
Everyone.
I actually know two, and I don't dare tell either one of them.
I tell you, I'm going to tell a story on him. So he hadn't seen me in a while, and he ran into Chuck White. And all of you who know Chuck White, we know not to believe a damn thing Chuck White says, right? Chuck convinced him that the reason why he hadn't seen me is I had left the gay community, rejected everybody, converted to the Mormon church, and was now married and working in the temple.
And when I seen her, I didn't know if I dared talk to her. So, but like I say, I want to thank everyone who's here tonight, especially those who have been supportive of me and helped me get through my life, those who I've had the opportunity to work with. I always believed that there was a lot of people that build a bridge and roads and fences to get over that I didn't have to go over. And I appreciate everything they did. I appreciate the people who make me look good when I do something. I always laugh at Brenda. She's not afraid to talk, but for some reason she didn't talk as much as I thought she would when we were together.
You had it covered.
We had a great time. And I met Rocky when I first moved here, or Colin, and Ben, and a lot of friendships I've developed over the years. I've lost several friends to HIV, and it's been hard. When I was first diagnosed with HIV, I give you an idea a little bit about what my family's like. My mother was diagnosed with cancer not too long after I was diagnosed, and so I knew a lot about the virus. I knew when I seroconverted, and it was in November of '90. So I chose not to tell her, and she passed away, and after that I thought I needed to let a family member know just in case. My brother's a school teacher, very active LDS bishop at that time, stake president. So I told him I was HIV positive, and I'm driving him home, and he looks at me and he says, and he starts asking me questions, and can I talk about this in my class, and can I use you for a resource? And we had a great conversation, and about 15 minutes later, he says, "Oh, are you okay?" So the HIV thing for my family has not been. I've been very lucky in that my family's been very accepting. Like I say, with 6 younger brothers and sisters, we have a very diverse family. We have me, then we have the bishop, and then we have the returned missionary sister. Then we have the Baptist, the Catholic, the Presbyterian, and then my baby sister and her husband attended a non-denominational Christian church for many years. So religion's not a big issue, but politics though. At one point in my life, I had an opportunity to meet a lot of national people, and I've learned to admire a lot of them and what they've done for our community. And I hold people like Ben and Colin and a lot of you in this room that I know well as high esteem as I'm sure you do them. Like I say, I got to meet Tori. I got to develop a friendship with Cleve Jones over the quilt project. And so it's been an interesting time. But I look at what they do, and I look at what these people in this room done and have seen them do. And if it wasn't for every one of you doing what you do, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I thank you all for what you do. So.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh, you sweet man. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for coming and joining us this evening. And Sherry, I never knew all this shit about you. Some of it admittedly, because I fled Zion and was in California for 20 years. But even the stuff that for when you were here, I was like, oh, that's right. You brought up lots of good memories.
One of the funniest things I ever remember hearing was those who knew Dale Sorensen. I remember they always were talking about who to go to, and Dale says, I swear everybody in town has me on their Rolodex.
Yeah,
Well,
it was true.
After I got diagnosed and he left town, I swear they had all me as the HIV guy on their Rolodex.
Well, thank you again, Kevin.
Thank you for letting me come.
Oh, sure. Reminders. Next Wednesday at 6:30?
7.
At 7 p.m. here is the meeting of the Utah Stonewall Historical Lecture Series led by Ben. And he usually does the lecturing. He's been going through queer Utah history year by year. What year did you start with?
In the 1940s.
1940s. We're now at 1991. He's been doing 91 for three now, or two meetings now, because so much was happening. And so this time we're still on 1991, and I will be talking about getting the university to pass the non-discrimination policy that included sexual orientation, which was approved in 1991, and then the founding of Queer Nation Utah,
Yeah.
when Curtis Jensen, Melanie Bailey, and I started the radical activism. And so please come and join us next Wednesday night at 7. And then on March 27th, is that right, Randy?
Yeah.
That's our next meeting of the oratories, which is these oral history projects. Again, we'll announce later who.
Actually, I was going to say.
Have you decided to do it? Thank you,
No,
Sister
I'm
Ross.
You know, hardly. I would love if we could have an evening with Mr. Johnson, Ron Johnson, and Brenda Voizard next on March 27th. Would the two of them be an absolute amazing?
I don't know who the gentleman is. Brenda, I know and love, but
But Ron and Brenda, to me, would be heaven.
Why don't you get together with Ronald, because he's the chair of these things from now on.
We're just bugging each other.
Ron Johnson, are you up for that?
I don't know.
I'll take that as a yes. Sister
He's never
Voizard.
said no to me.
We can talk about it.
Let's talk.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. All right.
The rest of the room, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two be just, they're both kind.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Drive safely. You don't have to go home, but you do have to leave.